I'm Naiswami Gyandev, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to what has become one of the many highlights of Ananda's annual Spiritual Renewal Week, storytelling from the Indian scriptures. In a few moments, Murali Venkatrao is going to take us back to ancient India and share a very special story. In addition to being a gifted storyteller, Murali is an Ananda minister in Seattle, where he also heads up Seattle's Ananda Yoga Teacher Training Program. But for the next 45 minutes, he's going to be all about the story. And the star of this story is a river. Now, as you know, rivers have their origins in mountain springs and snow and glaciers. At least that's as much as our human eyes can see. But Murali is going to help us to see how this river had a very different origin, and how fortunate all of us are that it did. Enjoy the story.
Hello everyone. The story I'm about to tell you is very famous in India. It's not the story of a king or a commoner. It's not the story of a devotee or a philosophy. Rather, it's the story of a river so pure and so holy that it's believed that one dip in her waters is enough to cleanse one of sins of many lifetimes. And it's the story of Bhagirath, whose unflinching determination and one single-minded efforts helped bring the celestial stream down to the earth. All rivers are sacred. All rivers are holy. Since the dawn of civilization, every single settlement, every empire has been sustained by a life-giving river that flowed next to it. I myself have gazed in awe at the impossible size of the Amazon. When you are in one bank, it's so wide in places that you cannot even see the other bank. I have traveled the entire length of the Missouri River from its headwaters in Yellowstone all the way to where it meets the mighty Mississippi and beyond. I've looked in wonder at the vast floodplains of the Huanghe in China. I have sipped from the headwaters of the Sutlej River in the remote, barren plains of Tibet, and I have bathed many times in the Kaveri River of South India. All rivers are sacred. All rivers are special. Every river is holy. But there is one river that stands apart. She's so sacred, so holy. She's so adorned and loved by her people that when they gather every 4 years to pray to her and adore her, the crowd is visible from space. I'm talking about the river known as Ganga to the billion people of the Indian subcontinent, and by her anglicized name of Ganges in the rest of the world. This river sustains 1/6 of human population in her watershed. Ganga not only merely gives life to this billion people, but she also sanctifies them so that they can transcend life. And this is why Paramahansa Yogananda, in his spiritual classic, The Autobiography of a Yogi, he said, just as Mother Ganga offered her divine draught to the parched devotee Bhagirath, so the celestial flood of Kriya flowed from the Himalayas into the dusty haunts of men. Today this river is choked with pollution, overflows with industrial affluence and human overuse. But just like a layer of dirt, no matter how thick, can obscure or diminish the sparkle and shine of gold underneath. All you need to do is clear away the dirt, and gold lies there undiminished. And just as a bank of clouds, no matter how thick, can obscure the brightness of the sun, so it is that underneath all the choking affluence and all the human misuse, the waters of Ganga are pure and ready to sanctify us again. She's waiting for us to get our act together and clean it up. So let us proceed now to the story of Gangavatarana, the descent of the Ganga River. Like all stories, this one too begins a long, long time ago in the holiest spot on earth, the most sacred spot. It lies beyond the northernmost reaches of the mighty Himalayas, in a barren, wind-swept, foreboding, high-altitude plateau, which we today call as Tibet. In there lies a lake of surpassing beauty. It is a big lake. It's almost perfectly circular. The waters of this lake are very pure, so pure that it is said that the lake has existed since the dawn of time. It sprang from the mind of Brahma, the creator, and therefore it is called Manas Sarovar. Manas means mind, and Sarovar means lake. On a moonlit night, many thousands upon thousands of years ago, as the waters of the still lake shimmer with the reflected light of the moon, we find two people talking on the lake shore. One of them, but they're both sitting, but it seems like they're about 5 feet above the ground. They're floating above the ground. One of them, even though he's sitting, you can tell that he is a big man. He has a square jawline, and he has sharp features, inscrutable expression on his immobile face. It feels, looking at him, as if you're staring at a gigantic rock or even a mountain. He sits still. He's wearing flowing silk robes, the color of fresh snow, flecked and lined here and there with the deep black of granite. He is Himavat, the king of mountains. He's looking with great adoration at the young woman sitting in front of him. She too is floating about 5 feet above the ground. And it's as if she is dissolving and reforming herself, not so much solid, but a little bit of liquid trying to acquire a solid shape. She's wearing robes of finest silk, but the color changes from instant to instant, from deep blue to the reflected green of a forest to the dark black of midnight. Her name is Ganga. She is the daughter of Himavat, the king of mountains. The king of mountains is looking at Ganga, and Ganga looks back at him with eyes filled with adoration and love, and she says, "Father, I am so blessed to be born to you. You have nurtured me. You have imparted me knowledge and wisdom. You have taken care of me. Now tell me, now that I am an adult, tell me what is my destiny." The king of mountains looks at her daughter and says, "No, dear one, it is not you that is blessed, but it is I. Because gods have given you a great gift, a gift such as never been given and will never be given again. You see, my child, anybody whom you touch is instantly purified and cleansed." And Ganga looks back at him. Ganga, who is so pure that she doesn't know what impurity means. Ganga, who is so clean that she cannot fathom what it is to be cleansed. She says, "Father, I don't understand. I'm puzzled. Please explain." So Himavat says, "Every soul that is born on earth is born with impurities. There is impurities of the body. It manifests as disease. It's called vyadhi. There are impurities of the mind, such as anger, attachment, and desire. These are called adhis. And then there is the impurity of the soul. It's couched in a veil of ignorance, which prevents us from realizing our true nature. You, my dear one, have this extraordinary gift that as soon as you touch somebody, the diseases of the body are purified. The imperfections of the mind are eliminated, and the ignorance of the soul is lifted. You have a great destiny. You will serve creation for as long as the sun and the moon are there. But your destiny will be revealed to you by a man who has not yet been born. Wait for that. Until then, your job right now is to ascend to the heavens and expand yourself into a river so that the gods themselves, who too have these impurities, can be cleansed by your stream, and they can keep order in the universe." And he blesses his daughter. Ganga bows her head, and her material form begins to dissolve into a shimmering, weightless waterfall. And this sheet of water moves into the center of the holy lake, Manasarovar, backlit by the full moon, watched by the silent sentinel of the great mountain Kailas to one side. The stream begins to rise up. The weightless waterfall begins to rise up into the skies. And as Himavat lifts his great head and looks up, he sees his daughter Ganga spread herself as a pale band of light from horizon to horizon. She becomes Akash Ganga, the Ganga of the heavens. We know that today as the Milky Way. Now back on Earth, the calculus of life is unchanged. There are famines and floods, and there are wars interrupted by periods of peace and prosperity. In these days, thousands of years after Ganga ascended to the heavens, there was a great king. Well, he's not a great king. He was a famous king. Some kings are famous because they are very powerful. Other kings are famous because they are very wise. Other kings are infamous because they are stupid and tyrannical. This king, whose name is Sagara, he was kind of powerful, kind of. He was a little wise. He had his moments of wisdom, and he had his moments of stupidity and tyranny. He excelled at none of those. But he was famous for one thing. He was famous for having many children. Now you might ask, how many children should I have in order to be known for having children? These were higher ages, the consciousness were more refined. There was magic. Magic was a normal fact of life. Gods and demons walked among us in human form, and the presence of the great God was not too far away. So 10 children, well, even today 10 children is not that much of a big deal. Back in those days, 10 children, they just pop out. It's not a big deal at all. 100 children, well, for you and I, it might be a big deal, but for a king with multiple wives and 100 children, okay. No, Sagara was far beyond that. He didn't have 10, 100, 1,000, even 10,000 children. He had 60,001 children. 60,001. Think about that for a moment. What would you do with 60,001 children? Well, before I tell you, let's remove this one guy. He was a bad apple. He's just did all kinds of bad things. In fact, there is a very good backstory here about how the 60,000 children came to be and what this one guy did. It involves, among other things, a vegetable known as bottle gourd. But that's for a different day. It's not relevant to us. So let's forget this one bad apple and the other 60,000 children. What would you do? Well, the first thing, from the perspective of a king, is you wouldn't need an army, would you? That's your army right there. Among your children, all of them were very capable, Sagara's children. Some of them would know battle formations and be foot soldiers, and they can be the infantry. Others would know how to weave in and out quickly through battle formations, and they would be your cavalry. They would know statecraft, and others would know siegecraft. Still others would be tacticians, and more would be strategic thinkers. So you don't have an army. Your generals, majors, colonels, sergeants, and privates, they would all be right there among your children. So you're a king with a powerful army that's utterly loyal to you. What would you want to do? Become an emperor, of course. Now, how would you become an emperor? You should Google how to become an emperor. You'll get some interesting results, I kid you not. But back then, this was written down. There was a book you could open to the chapter which said how to become an emperor. I'm not kidding. There are scriptures that say this. And in there it told you the exact steps of how to become an emperor. The first thing you needed to become an emperor was one horse. Not an army of horses, but one horse. You pick a fleet-footed endurance horse that loved to roam. And then what you would do is you would sanctify the horse. These were rituals. They are called as yajnas. These yajnas were a big part of life, and the yajna that you did to become an emperor was called Ashwamedha. Ashwa means horse. And once you sanctified the horse, you would let it roam And any kingdom that it went to, the king either submitted to your dominion or fought you, and if you won, then he became a vassal. If not, your rituals ended, you don't get to be an emperor. So that's what Sagara did. He got a great horse and put his royal seal on its forehead. 60,000 sons said, okay, go make me an emperor. And the horse went, roamed around, kingdom after kingdom. They submitted to Sagara's dominions. Those who were stupid enough to fight him were not just defeated, but they were humiliated and decimated. And then pretty soon, years later, most of all of the earth was coming under his dominion, and the horse was ready to return back. Now, this part is very crucial. The horse had to come back, and then you had to finish. You had to chant some mantras, and you had to finish this ritual. Otherwise, all of this would be a waste. This was all being watched over by one person, and he was getting worried. You see, this was the king of gods. He's watching from the heavens. This has happened before. There have been other kings who had wanted to be emperors, and they took the entire world under their dominion. And then what happened? Were they content? No. They came to him and said, attacked the heavens and took away his throne. So the king of gods has been through this, so he knows. So what he did, just before the horse enters back into Sagara's kingdom, using his magical powers, he takes away the horse and hides it somewhere. The next day, the 60,000 children, they wake up, no horse. Without a horse, no empire. And the father said, don't show your face, don't you dare come back without the horse. So they start scouring the earth for the horse. Nowhere. They look hither and yon, up and down, everywhere. They couldn't find the horse. If you don't find the horse anywhere on earth, where do you look? You look underground. So they began to dig. It is said that underneath the surface, there are 7 layers of underworld. So they begin to dig. They go through the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and they come to the 7th layer near the core of the earth. This is the kingdom of snakes and scorpions, Patala it is called. It's a huge cavern that encircles the core of the earth. They come there, still no horse, and then they start looking. And then after a few days, they emerge into a grand gallery, a great big hall the size of a small city. And then they see the most unusual thing. It's underground, so there are stalactites coming down from the top and stalagmites coming up from the floor. And on the eroded top of a stalagmite, there is sitting a rishi. A rishi, a yogi, he's a self-realized being in constant God communion. This rishi is sitting in full lotus pose, meditating. Eyes are half closed and half open. He's very still. It seems like he's been still forever. When the eyes are half closed and half open, it means you are in God contact right that moment. You are absorbed in the bliss of the divine, and through this your consciousness has the ability to create universes and destroy them. Oh, he's sitting there, the rishi. Such is the peace that is emanating out of him that these rambunctious 60,000 children of Sagara grow silent for a minute. And then one of them says, look. And what do they see? The horse. It's standing there, grazing calmly. Pandemonium erupts. And they start shouting. They run to the rishi. They start calling him a thief, accusing him, hurling epithets at him. The universe pauses for a moment, unable to fathom this blasphemy. The rishi sits undisturbed, but the noise creates a wave of anger deep within him. He's still unmoving, but his eyes widen just a little bit, and the distilled essence of the power of his anger causes a slight twitch in his body. And then there comes a sound. Hum. A deep sound of hum. It doesn't come from his vocal cords, but it's the collective resonance of his trillions of cells responding to the anger that he experienced momentarily deep inside. This sound radiates out, instantly reaches the 60,000 suns, creates within them a fire. A spontaneous fire comes from each of their bodies. This fire doesn't merely char or singe or even barbecue or burn. What it does is it reduces them in an instant to a mound of ashes. All of this takes just a second. Here they are, the sons of Sagara have come into the grand gallery. They've seen the Rishi, they start calling him a thief. The Rishi vibrates for a moment, eyes flare open just slightly, and here is a mound of ashes. Stillness prevails, the horse is calmly grazing. Up on the surface, Sagara feels he's sitting, waiting in his ritual room. His heart feels the death of his 60,000 sons instantly. These were higher ages, such intuition was possible. With great sorrow, he calls the one person remaining in his lineage, his grandson. He says, "Your uncles are all dead. They have blasphemed against a great Rishi. Their souls need to be redeemed, because with ashes, they are unable to ascend into the heavens and take a rebirth and work out the burden of their karma. They will be damned for eternity in the hellfire of suffering. So go to the Rishi, apologize to him, beg his forgiveness, and ask how your uncles can be redeemed, and bring back the horse." Such is the power of delusion. So the grandson goes, asks the Rishi's forgiveness, and the Rishi says, "My son, they died because of their pride. Nothing on earth can redeem them. There's only one solution to this. The Akash Ganga, the celestial Ganga river, when a drop of her water touches their ashes, they will be redeemed." So the grandson comes back. Sagara becomes an emperor, rules for a few hundred years, but dies a sorrowful, broken man, because none of his sons are roasting in eternal hellfire with no hope of redemption. The grandson, who is a great soul, day and night he thinks about this. And then he does pujas, rituals, yajnas. He himself does austerities, goes into the Himalayas for a few years, but the pull of his kingdom is too strong. He comes back unable to get the Ganga down. His son is obsessed by liberating his granduncles, great-granduncles, and he too consults astrologers and alchemists, scientists and scholars on how to do this. He looks up at the Milky Way every night and says, "How can I get you down, mother?" But then he's only thinking, all the time, of course, but he doesn't do much about it. He rules his kingdom as a just king for many years, and time comes for him to die as well. So he calls him over. His son's name is Bhagiratha. Now, Bhagiratha is an extraordinary soul. Even as a child, instead of being obsessed with toys and friends and playfulness, his only thought was, how can I redeem my ancestors? And as a young boy, this desire matures into a life's purpose. And as a young man about to become the emperor, this life's purpose crystallizes into a one-pointed determination. So instead of taking over the empire, Bhagiratha calls his ministers and says, "I pick you," he points to one of the ministers, says, "Run this empire for me. I have a bigger thing to do." He says, they ask him, "When will you be back, sir?" And he says, "I will not be back. I'm giving up everything. Because if I don't give up anything, then the pull of the kingdom will keep drawing me back. So I will not be back." This is it. He wears the simple robes of a peasant, without turning his back, walks out with brisk steps out of the palace, out of the capital, into the forest. And when he does this, the strength of his determination awakens his intuition. He knows exactly where to go and what to do. Driven by his intuition, his inner knowledge, God is speaking to him. He walks through forests and meadows, canyons and ridges, rivers and lakes, comes into the foothills of the great Himalayas, goes through the foothills, comes to the awesome spine of the mighty Himalayas themselves, walks through the places of common pilgrimage, goes beyond them into foreboding places, hauntingly beautiful, that nobody has gone before. And he finds a spot. This is where his inner guidance has brought him. You see, until one gets that singular purpose, the guidance of the universe is obscure. The guidance of gods is unheard. But now Bhagirath hears it clearly, as if he's reading a book. The inner voice says, here it is, Bhagirath. This is where Ganga will come down. In front of him are 3 great peaks. Next to it is a pointed peak to the right, and to the left is a rounded peak. All of these are over 25,000 feet high, great Himalayan peaks. And on one of them is a great glacier, a river of ice. He stands there. How do you get Ganga the purifier? How do you get her down from her heavenly abode? Bhagirath realizes with unequaled intuition, to get Ganga the purifier, he has to purify himself. So he stands there. With his index finger, he draws 3 lines in front, and lo, a pillar of fire comes up. This is the fire that purifies the toxins from the body, vyadhi. Then he does the same to the right, left, and back, 3 more pillars of fire, those which purify the darkness of the mind, attachment, anger, desire. And then he draws 3 lines with his index finger at the sky, and another screen of fire manifests itself. Panchagni, it's called, the 5 fires. Standing amidst the 5 fires, standing on one leg, and then lifting his arms high up, Bhagirath begins to meditate. He stands this way, neither eating nor drinking, completely absorbed, baking in the heat of Panchagni, the 5 fires, in the midst of an unknown part of the Himalayas. Impurities, which we've gathered over lifetimes, don't go away so easily. You have to be determined. Tivra samveganam asannaha. Great attainment needs intense determination and one-pointed concentration. So Bhagirath stands there. There is the pain of the fires, but resolute, unmoving, he stands there. The body begins to shed its toxins. Diseases of long standing, of lifetimes, begin to melt away from him. Even though the body is thin and emaciated, it is full of vitality. The miasma of anger begins to lighten. The heartstrings of desire begin to break. The draw of attachment diminishes. As his mind purifies, even though the body suffers, experiences great pain, the mind doesn't suffer. The mind begins to experience ecstasy. How long does this take? Bhagirath stands like this for 100 years, unmoving. And then the mind slowly begins to release its hold on his feelings. The feelings draw inward, transform into devotion. It goes on for 500 years. The breath begins to stop. His vital energy comes inward. And now, after 1,000 years, Bhagiratha's tapasya, austerity as it's known, his unflinching determination, after 1,000 years, his mind calls out, he says, Mother Ganga, where are you? Please, won't you come down and bless me with your presence? You see, when a purified mind calls out with great concentration, the universe has to obey. Sometimes we pray, we ask for things. It doesn't work because the mind is not pure, our concentration is not complete. But with complete conviction and utter purity of purpose, if we ask for something, the universe will rearrange itself, transform itself to obey you. That is where Bhagirath is. This is what was necessary for Ganga. Ganga hears the call. It's irresistible in her heavenly abode. And then she comes down. As soon as she comes, the 5 fires which are surrounded Bhagirath, they douse themselves. And Bhagirath beholds Mother Ganga for the first time, going in and out of physical form, this thin sheet of water, frothing and bubbling, and these cool droplets of water touch Bhagirath for the first time, quenching his parched body, calming his fierce mind, lifting the veil of ignorance from his soul. And then Ganga says, I'm very pleased with you. What do you want? What can I do? And Bhagirath says, Mother, you have purified the gods for thousands of years. With your mere touch, you purified me. Will you not come down? Flow on this earth. There are millions of souls who labor, afflicted with disease and in the darkness of anger and attachments and desire. And in ignorance, they have forgotten their true purpose. Will you not come bless this earth and bless all of them with your presence? Ganga now remembers her father's words. Much later, he had said, there is a man who is yet to be born who will tell you what your destiny is. And she realizes, this is he, Bhagirath. So with great happiness, she says, yes, I will come down. But there is a problem. What is it, Mother? And Ganga says, I'm a heavenly stream created by the gods themselves. If I come down, the earth will be split asunder by my force. It will be knocked out of orbit, and humanity will be destroyed. There is only one that can bear my force. Bhagirath, you have to seek his blessings and ask him to bear my force. And Bhagirath says, who is it, Mother? Who should I pray to? And she says, who else can it be? Of course, other than Shiva, Maheshwara, the great god of destruction, the great yogi who has no desires but fulfills everybody else's desires. Pray to him, Bhagirath, and then he will bear my force, and then I shall descend. Bhagirath, the determined, 1,000 years later, he has to do something else, but not for a moment does he lose his heart. Tivra samveganam asannaha. Great attainment requires unflinching determination and one-pointed focus. He goes back. This time, he stands on his toes and lifts his arms up, supported only by his toes. He begins to chant the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. The mantra goes, Om Namah Shivaya. The mantra is not coming again from his vocal cords, but his every cell is vibrating to the resonance of these ancient syllables. Om Namah Shivaya. Every time he chants it, the vibrations of the mantra radiate outward and purify, beautify everything in sight. And this is why today in the Himalayas, you can feel that presence. When you go there, when you cross a certain level, it's called Deva Bhumi, the abode of gods, because it's been purified by the blessings of great souls like Bhagirath for thousands of years. Bhagirath continues to chant Om Namah Shivaya. The earth continues to be blessed. And Shiva, who is the very embodiment of compassion, his heart responds to that immediately. He cannot bear or deny his devotee of anything. But then he stays still without coming to Bhagirath because he wants the world to have an example of great determination and selfless effort. So he waits for a little bit. Bhagirath continues his tapasya, austerity. And 100 years later, Shiva can no longer bear the call of his devotee. His heart simply has to go. So he comes to Bhagirath. Bhagirath is praying with his arms lifted, and in his inner landscape, Shiva manifests himself. How does Shiva look? He's tall, not tall like a human being. You wouldn't look at it and say, oh, there's a tall man. But he's tall like the mountains. It's a presence whose physicality is inexpressible. It is so overwhelming. He's ash-covered throughout his body, and he's wearing the skin of a tiger. Now, that skin has the creative power of the entire universe. It's vibrating with power. Around him, his neck is a cobra, coiled many times with its hood spread out at the level of his heart. That is the desire, the elemental desire that keeps the creation going. For Shiva Maheshwara, that is merely an adornment, because is he not the primeval yogi who has conquered all desires? He has matted locks spreading wildly in all directions, tied into a top knot. And at one side of the top knot is the cooling glow of the moon. The moon, from whom we measure time, is again an ornament to Shiva, because is he not timeless? He holds in his hand a great big trident. The three pointed ends of the trident are the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, the interplay of which creates the universe. Is Shiva not the owner of space? So the trident too is outside of his form. So the timeless, immanent form of Shiva comes to Bhagirath. The joy Bhagirath finds in this divine communion is indescribable. Forgotten are the 1100 years of unspeakable austerity that he had to perform. He's purified, healed in that moment, and there are tears running down his face. And for the moment, even Bhagirath, the determined, forgets why he is there. Such is the presence of God. And then Shiva says, what do you want, my son? I'm very pleased with you. And Bhagirath says, Lord, you know everything. Yet you ask, because we are given the free will. You can give anything, you're ready to give everything, but unless we ask, you don't. So here it is. I will play along. Lord, will you not please stand among these mighty peaks of the Himalayas and bear the force of Mother Ganga on your head? And Shiva says, be it so, tathastu. And then the form of Shiva comes out, becomes material, assumes a physical form, and then he lands on a great mountaintop and begins to grow himself, growing taller than any of the surrounding mountains, his great feet planted firmly on Mother Earth. And then he stands there and mentally he signals to Ganga that he is ready, and Ganga hears the call of her Lord. And Ganga falls. How was it when Ganga fell? Imagine a waterfall stretching from horizon to horizon, shimmering, a thundering roar. In that waterfall are dolphins, crocodiles, fishes, swans, other birds. They're flitting in and out like little lightning bolts, a shimmering waterfall with lightning bolts in it. She's falling down with a power that shakes the fabric of the universe. All the gods, 33 of them, they stand there, the 8 elemental powers, the 11 destructive powers, the 2 healers, and so on. They all stand there, bedecked in their finest jewelry, and it is as if the sky is lit up with the light of 1,000 suns, and they are watching this extraordinary spectacle. And Ganga continues to fall, and this great sheet of water gets magnetized into one single point, the top knot of her Lord, Shiva. And she falls. Shiva is unmoving. The force of this celestial stream gets absorbed and distributed in his matted locks. When Ganga touches anybody, they are instantly purified. But when Ganga touches Shiva, she is sanctified. She acquires the purity and endurance that is necessary to cleanse the earth and all the souls in it of their sins. With a smiling face, Shiva releases Ganga in 7 streams. There are 3 streams to the east and 3 streams to the west. One of the eastern streams becomes Brahmaputra. One of the western streams becomes Sindhu or Indus. But then from the center flows in the southerly direction, the main stream, the Ganga. Ganga the pure has come out of the great god Shiva, watched by Bhagirath the determined. And as Ganga comes, she touches Shiva's feet, and for the first time since creation, touches the earth. And the earth moans in ecstasy. She knows that her burdens from now on forever are reduced, because here is the grace of God taking the form of a river, giving succor and salvation to her children forever. And so Ganga begins to flow. She knows she has come home. All this time she was just in boarding school. She was just there waiting for her destiny to unfold. Now she comes home. Ganga, who's regarded as the wife of Shiva, comes home to earth, who is regarded as the wife of Vishnu. Destruction and preservation form a complex interplay for the purification of our souls. And as Ganga flows down, in some places, she flows as an angry stream, flowing narrow and fast. She makes an unexpected turn here and widens suddenly into a slower stream, like a little girl skipping and hopping when she comes home. Ganga is happy. She falls through great waterfalls and valleys. Bhagirath is in the front, leading her, and Ganga follows him like a daughter. And she playfully comes up and washes his feet and legs. And she throws a spray of water on Bhagirath's body, just like a playful girl would do. And then Bhagiratha goes, Ganga follows. Hundreds of saints and sinners, rishis and yogis take a dip for the first time ever in the waters of Ganga and are instantly purified. Ganga flows through from the high place where Ganga was born. It's called as Gangotri. You can go there even today. There is a temple to Bhagiratha. Go there. Feel the austerity, if you will. Feel the extraordinary vibrations of Bhagiratha's effort and the first purifying presence of Ganga river. I have been there. It's an extraordinary place. So Ganga comes down from the lofty mountain heights to Devaprayag, where thousands of years later, Rama comes to purify himself after the battle with Ravana. She flows even lower through Rishikesh and to Haridwar, where, again, many thousands of years later, a drop of the nectar of immortality falls in a place called Brahmakund. You can go there even today. And then she flows through the eternal city of Kashi, the immortal city where people come to die. So Ganga goes there as a meandering, mile-wide stream, flowing through, sanctifying thousands of people along the way. And eventually, Ganga makes her way to the Eastern Ocean. She goes into the ocean. Even though she merges with the ocean, Ganga remains Ganga. She's not absorbed into the salt of the ocean. And that stream, through the depths and trenches of the ocean, goes all the way to the ocean floor. And there is a yawning trench, which is so deep that it leads to the very core of the earth, to Patala, the home of scorpions and snakes. So Ganga goes through that trench and flows on the mound of ashes of the ancestors of Bhagiratha, the 60,000 sons of Sagara. Brahma, the creator himself, is waiting. And the moment the touch of Ganga purifies their ashes, the sons are instantly liberated, and Brahma is waiting to take them to the heavens. As they ascend to the heavens, Brahma says to Bhagiratha, with indescribable joy, Bhagirath is standing there watching this spectacle. And Brahma says, Bhagirath, single-minded determination, giving up of all things, putting your mind and body and soul into one single goal that doesn't help you a little bit, but it's meant to help others. These are the ways in which the soul can be purified. You have set an example for as long as the Ganga river flows and for as long as the sun and the moon rise and set. This effort of Bhagiratha, as it will be known, Bhagiratha Prayatna, it's called even in India today. He says, anybody who wants to attain a great big thing, let them recall your story and put their minds to it, and they will be blessed. Now go back, my son Bhagiratha, go back to your kingdom. Your subjects need you. Rule them justly. And then Bhagiratha goes back to his kingdom. Today, the Ganga river, this pure, unsullied stream which came down to the heavens to fulfill her destiny of purifying human souls, she flows as a choking, polluted stream, a testament to human excesses. But then, all it takes is for us to put forth determined effort. Bhagiratha did. Bhagiratha with his effort brought down the Ganga. Let us, through our efforts, each of us, become one-pointed and determined to clean up this celestial stream so that she can continue to purify us as she has done for thousands upon thousands of years. The great saint Ramanuja once said, he had this following prayer to the greatness of Ganga. He said, Sharire jarjari bhute vyadhigraste kalebare aushadam janhavi toyam vaidyo narayano harihi. And what that means is when the bones are penetrated with disease and the body is destroyed as a result of it, the only medicine are the waters of the holy Ganga, administered by the only doctor, which is God himself. Let us make this prayer true once again. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.